Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me. It is Scripting Friday. That just has a better ring than Scripting Thursday, doesn't it? Today, we are going to cover and talk about a dialogue that I use to help sellers be more realistic in their pricing. And hopefully you guys have all experienced, you're meeting with the seller and you're trying to coach them and to be, realistic in their pricing, but they always have this lofty idea, right? Well, if you start saying you're wrong or in my opinion or anything like that, they're just going to go talk to more realtors until they find somebody who says yes to their obscenely high number, right? And then in the end, they get punished by the market anyway. So what I'm going to teach you today is a technique that allows the market to deliver the bad news, not you. And in the end, they're going to feel like the prudent thing to do is to price it more realistically. And I did this training a bit ago and recorded it. So I'm actually going to just play the recording. It's about 17 minutes in length. And then at the end, we'll open it up for questions. We got people coming in, so let me get those folks in, and I will share my screen. And what if I could show you a way to get sellers to price realistically without you having to say that's too high, right? And then I know I opened it. Where is it? All right, well, we're going to do it this way. Oh, and I got to make sure I share the audio. I always forget that. This new Zoom always reconfigures. All right, so today we're going to cover what we call our color picture CMA tour. And I want to kind of give a little bit of a description, because what happens a lot of times is realtors will come with, a printout of comps and they'll have a conversation. The problem with that is you're trying to persuade, right? You're trying to convince somebody that their home's worth a certain number. And more often than not, the seller's opinion, or at least their hope, is that it's actually worth more, right? So you're kind of beating them over the head with data. We're going to use the exact same data. We're just going to do it with a little different spin. And we're actually going to invoke some of the psychology behind persuasion. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you how we do this. And I'm going to describe what I'm doing and how I'm doing it so that you can kind of see and understand how it works. So let's share screen. Okay, so what I have on the screen is a CMA that I've done for a property that I'm going to go meet with a seller next week on. And I always want to go to any meeting with a seller, a prospective seller, planning to sign them, right? So I always bring the complete package of paperwork. I have preloaded folders here in my office. I just grab a folder and go. But I also do the CMA, because if all goes well, they're going to sign a listing agreement. They're going to want to talk about list price strategy. We have a whole other video on how to design a proper list price strategy, because the list price and the market values are rarely the same number. So this video is about that process of showing somebody what their home is worth and helping them arrive at a number for a market value number, so that we can then have that conversation. So the thing that you want to pay attention to, and you might want to screen grab, is I'm actually going to take these comps and I'm going to print a set of forms and reports that facilitate this conversation that we're going to have. So if you go down here and I've already pared down the comps to the quantity that I want. You want to have at least 4 comps in order for this to be effective. Ideally, it's 5, 6, maybe 7. I actually found 8 because I want to rely on the solds, of which there's 6, but I also want to educate my client on what the competition is. So I included a couple that have not yet closed and acted in a pending. So then I click on CMA, and it takes me to the wizard that's going to help me create one of those fancy CMAs. I don't want a fancy CMA. What I want are photos of the comps only, like the photo gallery report, and then the data so that I can use that information, right? So if I click on pages here, this is the list of pages out of these sections of available pages. Just screen grab this list right here, and it's going to give you what you need for this process, right? So I print those, and then I bundle them. And by bundle, I mean I separate them and staple them into small groups, but I bundle them into what I'm going to call my master package, right? And the first page of the master package is the map, because sometimes you're showing comps to a seller and they're asking, where is that in relation to my house, right? So if I found their home as a previous listing, it would show up here. If it doesn't, I'm going to put a little star where their home is, right? So I'm going to be able to show them, oh yeah, this one's around the corner from you. This one is, on the other side of the freeway from you, so it's less valuable, whatever, right? We want to make sure, I actually wouldn't use that other side of the freeway comp, but you know what I mean, right? We're going to figure out which comps are the best, and then they may ask you, where are they in relation to their home? And most of the time, the sellers are very familiar with, oh yeah, that side of the neighborhood is nicer or more valuable or less valuable or whatever. And then, this package was 60 pages, and I broke it into just the first 12 pages, and I stapled those together. So it gives me all the details and data about the comps that I've chosen. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to note what I think the value is, what I think the as repaired value could be. And remember, I haven't been to the home yet when I'm preparing this, but I'll have a sense of what the top end of the market is for that neighborhood. And then I'll try and opine if I think it's going to be a moving concierge candidate or not, right? The other thing I do is this little box right here. If you can look in the camera on my screen, it's actually a stamp that I use. And I stamp on the paper so that I can write what's the year built, bed, bath count, square footage, lot size, or other notes like, is it remodeled? Is it original? Whatever, right? So that's the subject property information. And you'll notice it's on page 2. So when I'm holding this packet of papers, they can't see what my opinion of value is yet, because I don't want to disclose that until we played this game. Then this is all the prep work, right? Before I've gone there. The next thing I do is I staple the packages by house. So this house is 7118 28th. All 5 pages are of the photos of that one house. And that's the end of the 5 pages, right? So this is one 5-page bundle of photos for one specific house. I've stamped it with the information for year built, bed, bath, square feet, etc. And I'll have already written on that information. This yellow line over here, this is just where I'm going to write down, while we're playing the game, what they're guessing these homes are worth or what they've sold for. So I put that little stamp on all 8 of these comps, you can see, and these individual packages are all stapled one house together at a time. So it might be 4 pages of photos, it might be 5, it could be 2. Some agents are quite lazy, right? So here's a 4-pager, here's a 7-pager. So this person used most of the 40 available photos, and that's great, right? So here's the setup for the game. and I will stop sharing my screen so you can see me, and we'll come back to those images. So the psychology behind this game is that humans inherently like contests and games. It's quite the exception to find somebody that doesn't. So when we play games, we want to win, right? So what happens is you come to this conversation and the homeowner has a preconceived notion of what they think their home is worth, right? And in some instances, if you were to ask them what their home is worth, they'd actually give you a number that's higher than what they really think, because they think this is some sort of negotiation, when it's really not. We're just trying to see where they think their home is worth, right? So what happens is the consumer comes to the conversation with this hope of getting $1 million for their home, right? So this hand is their hope and aspiration for a certain number and value for their home. This hand is their desire to win the game. And this desire is quite low at the beginning because they didn't even know they were going to be playing a game, right? So they were hoping to get $1 million. They couldn't care less about winning some silly game, right? But then you put one of those bundles of photos in front of them, and they make their first guess, right? And in their first guess, they see a house. If you've ordered them correctly, you want to make sure that you put them in a sequence that will help retrain their brain, right? So the first guess usually is a home that's superior to theirs. And they're going to go, if I want $1 million, that house better have sold for 1.1 or above, right? So they're going to guess 1.1 because their hope for $1 million is still alive. And then you break the news to them. Actually, that one sold for 925. Boom. Their hope for $1 million just got injured, right? And they were wildly wrong on their guess, so their desire to be right just increased. And what happens is, as you show them numbers 2 and 3 and 4 comps, hopefully 5 or more, they get to where they're guessing correctly and they realize their home is not going to be worth $1 million. Does that make sense? Right? So you really need at least 4 comps in order for that evolution to occur. Otherwise, they're going to cling to the $1 million hope. So let me go back to the data and show you what I mean, right? So they don't really see this master package, right? They're just going to get this first set of comps. They're going to see down here that it's a similar aged home. It might have similar beds and baths. Hopefully it does. The square footage is hopefully within 20% bigger or smaller. And then on this one, as you can see just from these photos down here, I would put the lot size and I would put that it's been thoroughly remodeled, right? Sometimes I'm writing that only the kitchen's been updated, or maybe the kitchen has it, but the bathrooms have, or whatever. So I sort of quantify what sort of updates the homeowner has made. This particular house, I might write 100% remodel, right? Because remember, you're now sitting in their home, and we already know it is or it isn't updated at all, or maybe it's somewhat, right? Updating is a continuum. And so homes are going to be somewhere on that continuum, and you're trying to quantify for them while they're looking at these images, whether it's 100% or it's just bedrooms and bathrooms, but nothing else. Kitchen and bathrooms, but nothing else, and whatever. And then what I do is over here, I write their guesses. If it's a husband and wife, I make them both guess. I alternate who gets to go first, because a lot of times spouses will key off of each other, and I'll go, okay, Joe, Susie's gone first every time. Now it's your turn. You guess first, and then Susie will go after you. And then I write below the line the truth. Well, this one actually sold for $925, right? And in a shifting market like we're in, I'll also communicate when it sold, how many days on market, those sorts of things, because those are relevant, right? If this home sold in April That's before the 200 basis point increase that happened in May of 2022. So we want to make sure we communicate that, right? Because we're going to put less weight on a home that sold during the white hot bidding war market that ended in May of 2022, right? So then we'd go through this process, and here's comp number 2, the bed, bath, square feet, amount of updating or not, and so on. What do you think it sold for? And then they will guess. I will educate them on what it actually sold for. And what you're going to find as you go through these comps is that their guesses become more and more accurate, and the gap becomes smaller and smaller. And that's what we want, right? Now, sometimes they might say, oh, I know that house. It sold for $998, $888, or whatever it was. That's all right. That's still educating their brain, right? So we go through this process. We play this game. They now have sort of gotten their brain more dialed in, right? And what we have is we have a continuum of prices. And usually that continuum also lines up with the condition, right? Then the more updated homes sell for more money, that sort of thing. So then what I do is I take each of those packages, right? In this case, I have 8 comps, and I lay them out on the table in the order, and I do it opposite me, right? I'm facing them. So I put the lowest one on my right, their left, up to the highest and most expensive one on my left, their right, right? So they're reading them from left to right, and they're going up in value from left to right. And then what I tell them, or I ask them, is, okay, where do you think your home fits on this continuum? And I make them physically spread the papers out and go, oh, well, mine goes in between these two, or whatever, right? And then that makes it super easy for us to go, okay, well, this one sold for $875 and this one sold for $885. So your value is in between those, right? They might say, this doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. They might say, you know what? I don't care about any of this. My house is worth $1 million. Well, then you, the realtor, have a decision to make. Do I work with these people or not? Because it's not going to do you any good to list a home at $1 million when it's clearly worth under 900, right? So you might say something like, you know what? I'm probably not the right guy to help you get your home sold. And they'll be like, why is that? Well, because my system is designed to generate the absolute most return on your investment, but I'm not going to touch that number that you're hoping for. Now, if you want to wait until appreciation lifts your home closer to $1 million, we certainly would be the first firm to get you that number as we got closer to it, but that's not today. And then what I'll ask a lot of times is, why not stay? And that will really dig into their emotional why, right? They're going to say, well, we want to be with our grandkids down in Florida or whatever it is. Well, you can't be unrealistic in your pricing in an effort to have more money when you get down to Florida. The market doesn't care what your motivation is. The market cares what the value is, right? So again, that's an exception. It's a pretty rare exception because more often than not, this process, that whole getting them to be realistic and their desire to win a contest trumps their desire to get $1 million, and they become more realistic as a result of this process. So that is the color picture CMA tour process. That is how you get an overzealous seller to be more realistic. And that's how I deliver CMAs always, right? Because it's pretty unusual, the seller who's realistic and grounded in, oh, my home's only worth $875,000. I recognize that. No, they're always hoping to get more money. So that's our job, is to get them more money. But we also need to have a realistic and intelligent conversation about how to price the listing so that we can maximize the sale price, right? That's a whole separate video. It's all about the 3 different numbers that we have to communicate to a seller. And that's another differentiator for us, because most realtors just think there's one number and they're not very good at identifying that one in the first place. There's actually three. So go check out my video on the three numbers that you have to be able to communicate to your sellers. And that's it. Have a great day. This view. All right. What do you guys think? Will you see that will help somebody kind of they might be disappointed, right? But they'll be more realistic once they've seen the data. I can show you, here's an example right here, right? This is a seller. When I said in that video, I do this every time, I wasn't kidding, right? Because here's the master package, right? Which I don't know if I put I started to put the notes on it, right? On the second page. And then behind that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 comps, each bundled separately by photo. And then they've all been stamped, etc. So it takes a little bit of time to prepare, but can you see how going through that process, because you've prepared, is going to help you list the home at a number that's going to get it sold, right? And there's another dialogue that I use, and I don't use it accusatorily. I don't say you're being stupid, but what I will say, I'll talk about all the other sellers. I'll go, one of the things that the unsavvy negotiator will do is they'll think, I need to price higher so that I have room to come down. That's suicide, right? I don't say that to them, but I say, one thing an unsavvy negotiator or unsavvy seller will do is they'll price their home artificially higher in order to have some room to come down. The problem with that is you reduce the market exposure. We actually have a slide in our listing presentation that shows if you price your home just 10% higher than market value, at market value, you get about 60% exposure. And if you go 10% higher, it drops to 30%. So as you can imagine, if I'm having this conversation, it's after I've probably already delivered my listing presentation, because now they've hired me and we're starting to have a conversation about list price. So I can reference that slide, but if I haven't given the listing presentation, I still know that slide by heart, right? So I can tell them, for that unsavvy seller, not you, you're smart, right? But for that unsavvy person, they're cutting their exposure in half. And that's terrible, right? There's another dialogue, and then I'll open it up to questions, which is the formula for success in real estate is visibility on the internet leads to showings. Showings lead to offers. Offers lead to sale price, right? But it all starts with how many eyeballs do I get on your house? And we can cover that in a future Agent Power Huddle. I think what I'll do next Friday is I'll cover the 3 numbers dialogue that I referenced in the video. So any questions on that process? And if not, any other, we always leave the last few minutes of this half hour for any dialogue that you might wonder about or need right away, or, unrelated to whatever our content was. Steve Wade from Bellingham. How the heck are you?
Doing great. Ed?
I have a question.
Love your color picture CMA.
Thank you. I'll answer Steve's question first, and then whoever said that, I think it might have been Gan, we'll cover yours next. Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah. So I feel like, my experience and probably most people's experience selling anything, such as at a garage sale or on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or something, is it does play into that idea. They say, well, every time someone wants to buy something, they always try to lowball me. They give me a lower price than what I'm putting out there. So this builds this like lifetime of expectation that if I price it higher than what I really expect to get, I'll get what I want. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about maybe how we talk about how real estate is different, and to try to reset that mindset that actually does hurt you, that a way that somebody would like the light bulb moment would go off and be like, I get it. I get why I need to price low.
You like you asked your question in the perfect role play, and then you appended it. So I'm going to go back to your, hey, my whole life, whether I'm going on Craigslist or at a garage sale or whatever, blah, 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 right? To which my response is, we're not selling a bike. We're not selling a lawnmower. We're selling a house. And how you market and sell real estate is dramatically different than how you sell a bike or a lawnmower. And that's usually enough to snap them out of this like default, because that's kind of what it is, right? They've done it their whole life, so it's their default position. And they also realize, man, this guy or this gal knows a lot more about this than I do, because I would have made a mistake, right? And I'll show you guys the slide that I'm referring to, because if you go back through the Agent Power Huddle scripting playlist that's on theagentcollective.com, you'll find one that I think we did it in like September or October, where I went through the listing presentation and delivered it to the audience that day as if they were the seller. So feel free to go back and look at that. You also are welcome to steal ideas from it, plagiarize it, whatever you want to do. I gotta get back and share my screen. This is what I'm talking about, right? Oh, that's the wrong one. That's the buyer one. Duh. So this is the listing presentation. Again, if you want to see the whole thing, you're welcome to go back and do that. But this is the slide I'm talking about. So when I'm in your living room or your dining room, this is on my screen and I'm saying, you see right here, this is the market value, right? And at market value, we're still only getting 60% visibility on the internet. But if we go on a fishing expedition, that's what the term I use, and try and go up a little bit just so that we have room to negotiate, and I do air quotes, right? Because I'm sort of poking fun, right, at the person who's thinking that. And I realize that they might be thinking that, right? But I'm addressing it before they've said it. And I draw their attention to, look what happens. The visibility drops in half. And that's suicide, right? We don't want that. So we get them to realize, and sometimes, Steve, they'll say, but how do we get a full price offer if we've been on the market for a while? Right? Because that's their reasoning, is they want 900, so they think they should start at 950 so they can get 900. Well, if we've been on the market, for a while is vague. It would be the first thing I'd point out. But we can cling to our list price for a while at the beginning of the listing, right? But if it stays on the market for more than a couple weeks, that means the market is giving us feedback. That's the dialogue I use, right? The market's giving us feedback. And what is that feedback? It's that we're overpriced, right? So in the end, it's going to come down to who's the better negotiator. And you're a pretty savvy guy. I'll compliment my lead or prospect. They may not have hired me yet, depending on when this conversation is, but I'll compliment them and say, you know what? And I'm a pretty good negotiator too. Why don't we get on the same side of the table and work together to pick the pocket of the buyer? Yeah. So it's not too difficult to overcome that, even though it's a long-standing belief. because you're immediately dispelling it by separating lawnmowers from houses, right? I use that same dialogue when I'm talking about price bracketing. That's another topic from the listing presentation where we say, you know, if you price your house at $899, $999, you're cutting the visibility in half. If you just priced it at 900,000, which is only $1 higher, you would double the number of eyeballs that see your house, right? Because the guy or gal who's searching from 850 to 900 would see your house at 899, but the guy who's searching from 900 to 950 would not. And when I go through that dialogue, I use my hands, right? I go, the guy from 850 to 900 would see it, but the guy from 900 to 950 would not. And if you just increased it $1, you would double the number of eyeballs on it, right?
Yeah. It does seem to come down to this idea of visibility, and going back to the idea that if somebody is looking for a bike, they're going to search for, road bike or mountain bike or something like that. And they're going to kind of get all the bikes available in the market. But in real estate, I think it's people probably more search for a neighborhood, a number of bedrooms, a number of bathrooms, and then what they can afford, sort of what their budget is. So there's a lot more criteria. And if you're in the market within that neighborhood, competing with other people with similar size bedrooms, et cetera, and you're priced too high, I think the eyeballs are just like, well, let's start looking at the better values right away.
Yeah.
And so you get cut out because of that. And if you're low, people are going to be like, whoa, that's a lot lower than the rest of these. Let's curiously check out why might that be lower, right? And something along those lines, it's actually what the truth is.
And that's what we're going to cover in great detail next Friday is the market price versus the list price versus what does it ultimately sell for, and the dialogues that I use wrapped around that conversation, which it helps clarify in this person's mind that A, I'm pretty damn good at what I do, but B, they've never really thought about it that way. And now I'm educating them, right? I always try and lead people smarter by the end of the process than they were when they started with me. And you'll see in my profile, it says something like Ed has the heart of an educator. Well, that's by design, right? Because it doesn't matter if you're a first-time home buyer or an investor who's buying his 200th unit. We can all learn and we can all get better. And I've done all of that. So I think, Gan, did you have a question to follow Steve with? I know we've run a little bit long, but I don't want to fail to answer your question.
Yeah. The quick question is, when you are discussing with the seller about why the price is high or the right price to be made, what if the sellers, they nods or their heads and they don't indicate that they are agreeing or respond, but they go and listen to another broker or realtor who says that, okay, yeah, I can list it. And they go with them. And then after some time, they lower the price. But in the mean process, I have lost those.
Yeah. No, it's a great question, and it's a common question. So I'll answer Gan's question, but maybe that's a good topic. If we have time next week, we'll do a deeper dive, and if not, we'll do it the following week. But it's basically what do you say when the seller in the video you saw me say, sometimes sellers are going to go, I don't care what you just showed me. I want $1 million, right? And there's a number of objection handlers that you can use, and I'll teach you guys what those are. If they don't work, then you have a decision to make, right? Now, I think, and I assume you may have just said it. Did you say take the listing and then reduce it, or if it doesn't sell, reduce price in 2 weeks? Yeah, that's a common tactic. I honestly, no offense, Suma, I don't think that's smart at all.
Yeah.
Because the problem is the height of the activity and traffic on a listing is in the first 2 weeks.
Correct.
Right. And so what that dialogue does for those agents that use it is they screw themselves during the period of time when everybody's looking at the house. And then it kind of, it's truly a
Yeah.
a bell curve. So back to Gan's question, and we'll wrap this up. It's number one, you got to decide, do you want it? Number two, how much above market value are they? Because if it's only 2 or 3% higher than what our data just proved, I'll probably still take it, because I think we're not going to sell quickly. We're not going to get multiple offers. All of that's out the door, but it's still going to sell, and we're just going to get lowball offers, and he's going to eventually cave in and take one, right? But if it's much higher than that, that's when I use those dialogues like, why not stay? Or I'm not the right agent for you. If you want to sell, if you really want to get $1 million, we probably can do that, but it's not going to be until 2027 or whatever. Right. So, it's a difficult dilemma when somebody is obstinate about price, but I'm not listing that place. You can. Right? Or Suma's, hypothetical agent who just says okie dokie. We actually have that. I'll share one last image from my listing presentation, because as you can tell, my listing presentation is all about preemptively addressing objections before they even get raised, right?
Yeah.
And we have one called the broker traps. Here it is, right? Our right price promise. Here's how the dialogue goes. So, Gan, there's broker traps out there that we want to help you avoid. The first trap is the agent who says, okie dokie, to whatever number you say. And that's when I'll use that dialogue you heard in the video of, and a lot of times when you get in that conversation, the agent's going to say, what do you think it's worth? And you're going to think that the negotiation has just begun. So you're going to say something higher than what you truly believe. But then he says, okie dokie. And you're thinking, well, he's the expert. Maybe it is worth 1.1 million. And then you go on the market for 1.1 million and it languishes on the market. Right. And I'll even do like a visual aid where I'll be like, yeah, now you're chasing the market down, and you're only going to sell once you reduce it enough to intersect the line of the offers that are coming in lower and lower, right? Broker trap number two, well, that's the guy or gal that does know how to value your property, but they're hoping you don't. And they're going to give an artificially low number. And in the moment, you might be disappointed, thinking, shoot, I really thought it was with more, but he's the expert. And then he puts it on the market and it sells like that. And I snap my fingers. And I go, because a smoking deal doesn't require any marketing. And you just left a bunch of money on the table, and the agent's commission might have been a little bit lower, but his commission is only a percentage of the sale price. Yours is the sale price, right? So we want to help you avoid that problem. And then trap number three is the discount broker, right? It's the Redfin model, the guy or gal or company that says full service for 1%. And I'm going to show you today all the things that we do, and there's no way they can do all those things if they're only charging 1%.
Yeah.
So
That's good. Yeah.
right. And then we just go through the rest of the listing presentation and say, we're doing these 300 things, or 155 step system is what I call it. Christine, you had your hand up briefly. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Can I ask you what you show them? Like, if they say, okay, what do you do different? Can you pretend I'm the seller right now? What do you show them that shows you're different?
I'm only going to show Christine one page because we're out of
Okay.
time. But I would encourage you to go watch that video that I was referring to, because I cover this whole 52-page slide deck, right? But this is a one pager, because at the end, right, I'm on page 52 here. I go, so Christine, I've shown you a lot today. What stood out to you? And I make them answer that. And they'll say, well, I really liked your reverse offer program, or I really liked your sell for free program, or what I hear more often than not, especially because I believe because this screen is what they're looking at when I ask that question, they say, I just can't believe how comprehensive it is, right? You guys do everything, right? And I tell them, thank you. Based on that, am I the right guy to help you get your home sold? That's the closing call to action line. Am I the right guy to get your home sold? And if they say yes, I hold out my hand and shake their hand, and I close my laptop and I go to the folder, because now we're doing paperwork. Now, you may get some objections, and there's another Agent Power Huddle where we just covered the objections at the end of the listing presentation. Like, well, you're the right guy depending on what you're going to charge me, or depending on what you're going to tell me it's worth, or depending, right? And so I cover the objection handlers I use when people say that. I go, well, if they say, depends on what you're going to sell it for, I say, well, we're going to do the CMA together. It's your asset, though. You're the one that decides what to sell it for. I'm going to give you my advice, but in the end, it's your call.
Yeah.
That's comforting to them, right? If they say, it depends on what you're going to charge me, I say, well, my fee is X. And we're not colluding, so I'm not going to tell you what I charge. I will tell you that I've signed 7% listing agreements in abundance. So charge what you're worth, right? But I won't say the total number. I'll say my fee, right? So I'll use 3% just for this dialogue, right? If they say, well, it depends on what you're going to charge me, I say, my fee is 3%. You get all of this for 3%. And then I shut up, because what I want to do is have a pregnant pause right there, because they were hoping I was going to say 4%. Mm-hmm. And I actually said a number under what they were hoping for. So guess what happened in their brain? Endorphins got released. They actually get a sense of glee when they heard me say 3%. So I have to pause long enough for the endorphins to release in their brain. And then I say, and then all we have to do is survey the market and see what you should offer to a buyer's broker. And that's it. And they go, oh, okay. And then we go to the folder. I'm always going to the folder. You still have the floor, Christine. So if you have another question.
And what would you, when you get to that, what would you suggest that they pay the buyer's broker, or you don't write anything at all until you have an offer?
Great question. And it's changed a bit in this, post-NAR settlement world, right? So here's what I say. And I should qualify this because, as you guys can tell by my background, I'm in Seattle, and the Northwest MLS told NAR to kick rocks. The Northwest MLS said, we are not removing the selling office commission from the MLS printouts, because that's a lack of transparency. And the reason I want to say this is because you may not be able to do it this way, Christine, if your MLS doesn't have that data that you can review, right? But what I say to people, and I'll tell you what I would do if I were in New York, since you said, no, we don't have that, right? But what I say to people now in Washington is, we're going to survey the market and we're going to see what other sellers are offering. And we just want to blend in. We don't want to stand out on the high side. That means we paid too much. We don't want to stand out on the low side, because sadly there's brokers out there that won't show your house if they think you're not offering enough. So I'm going to do a survey of the 20 or so listings that sold recently in your area and show you the distribution of what they offered. And we just want to blend in. And if you're male, I'll use a sports analogy. Like, have you guys never noticed a good NBA referee? He's the one you don't notice. That's kind of what we want to be, right? We want it to be enough to incentivize somebody to come show it, but we don't want to stand out. Now, if I'm in New York and that data is no longer available, I'll just go back in time to when it was, right? Are you able to look at the selling office commission that was paid in 2023?
You mean go back on the old MLSs and see what they were offering?
Yeah. Because what
I don't even know if I could do that. No, I don't think so.
You could say, this data is not readily available any longer, but I'm going to look at 2023 for your area and tell you what people were offering then. And if that's not available, then you're just going to have to do it based on your experience. My experience in this market is sellers are offering 2.5 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, I get very little pushback, because like in our MLS, you have 3 choices. You can offer a commission. You can say, write it into your offer, or you can say, I'm not paying a commission. And I have never, and I list a lot of homes, I've yet to have somebody do anything other than offer a commission because of that dialogue. Because, in the end, it's stupid to say I'm not paying one. You just stuck your finger in the eye of 30,000 buyer's agents. Good job. Really smart, right? I never say it that way to people, but that's the image I'm painting with my words. And they go, yeah, I guess you're right. I want to incentivize people to show my house. Yeah. And if they really are digging in, I can make them feel a little bit better by saying, look, in the end, the commission is going to be an impact on the net. So you're going to be able to decide if the offer is high enough for you to be willing to pay that commission, right? And if it's not, we counter back. And this all gets back to you're a good negotiator, I'm a good negotiator, let's work together, right? So I do think it's going to come up more and more. There's been downward pressure on commissions for decades, right? It's not anything new. It's just we're having these conversations a lot more because of the awareness of the public about the NAR settlement. So what's this thing I heard? I don't have to pay commission anymore. No, that's not actually what it said, but and I have the benefit in Washington, and you probably do in your state, to poke fun at Missouri, right? You guys all know why the class action lawsuit was filed in Missouri is because they had a law on the books that said sellers had to pay buyer's agents. Well, that's stupid. Like, that's never been true. We live in a capitalist economy. You could choose to pay nothing at any time, right? I probably wouldn't work with you if you were doing that, but you always had that right? But here in Washington, we didn't have a law because that's unconstitutional. That law never should have been on the books. We did have a rule, and it had more to do with the technology than it did the commission, which was, hey, if you're going to put your house onto our software platform, the MLS, you got to offer a commission of at least $1 to do that. And so we got rid of that rule. So now sellers can say, my house is for sale and I'm not paying anything. But we still don't see very many doing that. Yeah.
A lot of agents here, unfortunately, when they have a house for sale and you want to show it, and because I've done this a few times, what are you going to give the buyer's broker? Like, if I sell it, what are you offering?
Yeah.
And quite a few said, we're not giving you anything. You have to get from the buyer. That's it.
Yeah. Yes, same here. Same here.
So here's the dialogue. Here's a dialogue I would use if you were the listing broker.
So I'm going to write this down.
Okay. It's being recorded anyway.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
So tell me an average list price in your market.
800,000.
Okay. Hey, Christine, I have this great offer for you. So by the way, that's 24,000 for Eddie, right? Hopefully. I have this great offer for you. My client is willing to pay full price for it. They actually were planning to offer less, but I talked them up to 800 to cover my fee. So I know your client doesn't want to pay me, but if it weren't for me, they wouldn't have gotten the offer at 800. So my fee is covered by my buyer, or more accurately, my buyer's lender, and your seller's net is what you need to focus on, which is, 776 or whatever it is. And this is like, I'm not splitting the atom here, right? If I'm doing an off-market deal, I'll tell the buyer that I'm going to get the seller to pay my commission, and I'll tell the seller that the buyer increased their offer to pay my commission. So both parties think the other party's paying it. And I get paid.
Okay. So then you would present it at 800,000, but you'll say realistically, no, it's 776 when we get the contract going. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it's been on the market for a while, I might say we're offering 780, but they wanted to offer 750, and I talked them up to cover my commission. Or whatever it is, I'm just going to paint this picture in your mind that it's higher so that the seller doesn't have to pay my commission.
Right.
And your commission is going up, by the way, because it's higher as well, right?
And do you tell the buyer what you're doing?
Mm-mm.
You don't speak to them. No.
Yeah, no, I'm transparent with them, because in the end, the way ours is written, if I'm unsuccessful, they're on the hook for it, right?
Right.
So they're rooting for me. And if you're doing a good enough job for your clients, they want to pay you. They're just hoping that you can get somebody else to pay you for them, right? All right, Allison, what last question?
I know it's going late. I'm sorry.
That's
Thank you
all
for
right.
staying late. So let's say you go through all that and they still say, my seller's not going to pay it. Do you say that I'm not going to show the house? Because I've seen realtors.
No, I always will show, because I figure the buyer, all they're going to do is find someone who will show, right?
Yeah.
So I'd rather be on your hip when you fall in love with a place so that I can help you get it. And I'm going to do everything I can to get paid by the seller. And if I'm unable, I'm going to send you an invoice, but I'm probably going to do it for like 1% or something, right? The problem, and this is all hypothetical, right? Because the problem is every buyer's different. Their down payment amount can vary. They either have some money or they're getting in by the skin of their teeth. Would I ultimately sell a home for free? Yeah. If I'm unable to get the seller to do it and the buyer doesn't have anything above their down payment to cover it, I'm going to talk to the loan officer and see if I can get him to help cover any of it, right? Because they can use premium pricing to do that. And in the end, if I'm not able to get paid anything, I'm going to talk to my buyer about referrals. Right? Hey, I hope you know I did everything I could to cover that obligation of yours, but I also know that you don't necessarily have money to cover it. So we can either reach an agreement on a payment plan over time, or you can commit to give me referrals of other friends and family members that want to buy. I mean, I'm just thinking this through right now, Allison. I would even be open to, hey, your obligation is 24,000, let's say. That's the example we used a minute ago. And for every referral you give me that hires me, I'll knock $5,000 off of it.
Ooh.
Right. So now
I'd ask for seller referrals though.
Yeah. I mean, I'm brainstorming this with you right now, but
This is awesome.
I'd be cool with that, right?
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Can you put your hand up one more time? I'm just going to point out to you guys, I love doing this. Hopefully you can hear it in my voice, but the fact that 8 of you hung out long enough to stay, I appreciate it. But Christine, if you have another question, I'm happy to.
Really quick. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever offer, say you show the house, the people want to make an offer, whatever it may be. You said you can always just say they want to pay say $600 for the house. You add on your 2 or 3% and just tell, who do you tell? You tell like the loan officer, you tell when you present the offer, you tell the realtor the real price is 2% less, that this is what they're paying, say 600,000, and I'm tackling on the 2% or whatever it may be, 3%. And then you would just tell him and then tell the loan officer, right? And then just you guarantee your commission then. Am I right?
Well, yeah. And in the end, it's what the contract says, right? So use the word, the real price.
Right.
It's really not a real price. The real price is 600, right? But the perspective or the impression I'm giving the listing broker is my client only wanted to pay 570, but I talked him up, or 580, whatever the net would have been, but I talked him up, right? So your loan officer is going to get a contract for 600. The escrow is going to be 600. The seller is going to feel like they got 600, but they're going to pay my commission.
Right.
We can definitely talk about this more next week if you want. We're going to also talk about the 3 numbers dialogue that's going to separate you from your competition, because your competition does not educate their client this way and talk about how there's actually my job. There's 3 numbers I'm supposed to give you, not just one, right? So we'll cover that dialogue in great detail. Other than that, have an awesome weekend, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
You too. Thank you, Ed.
You bet.
If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.